So a month or two ago, my family acquired this F1 Ultra laser. It's been great for some small wall art, some small projects, but I was wondering, could I make some large pieces with it, some large wall art with this tiny laser? The answer? Yes. So this is a 48-inch by 31-inch piece that I used as a mosaic type stained glass design that I cut all exclusive with this laser. So let me show you how I did it. So before we get started, I wanted to show you what I used and what you will need if you wanted to do the same thing that I did today. First off is the F1 Ultra laser. This comes with the xTool software. The xTool software is free, so you can use that if you have a different type of laser. You have to make sure that it works and it's compatible. I know that xTool software, you'd be able to save the program and be able to transfer it to your laser, but you're going to have to look into that a little bit more. For me, it's the F1 Ultra, and that's what I use. The other thing is I use Affinity Designer to design the art to be able to cut on the laser. Affinity Designer is a vector type designer editor. There are other free options out there if you don't want to use Affinity Designer. I particularly like Affinity Designer, so that is what I'm going to be using in this video. And the last thing that you'll need is a table saw. You can use a circular saw or a jigsaw, but I would recommend using a table saw for it. So let's get into it and I'll show you how I did it. I start off by opening Affinity Designer and creating a new document. I want my finished project to be 36 inches wide and 48 inches tall. I put that in the page fields and then click Create. With a blank canvas, I drag and drop my high resolution picture onto the document, resize and center it on the page. Now for the fun part. Click on the pen icon on the right toolbar and start tracing the image. I like to make the pen color a brighter color so that it stands out better over the original image. The pen is marking where the laser will end up cutting. Using the node icon on the right will let you select parts of the pen and adjust it. In the top toolbar has a convert area with 3 sections to allow the nodes to be converted from a sharp to a rounded and vice versa. I make the pen lines thicker to trace the outline of the subject, while having the thinner pen lines will be more for details and for separating the mosaic pieces. After the main subject is traced and details made, I go through and cut up into smaller sections for the mosaic pieces. Keep in mind that these pieces will need to be able to fit on the laser working area, so I'm making mine around 8 inches maximum size. This does take some time, so enjoy the process. When you're nearing the finish line, create a square the size of the laser's working area. The F1 Ultra's working area is 8.5 squared, but I'm giving it some wiggle room and making it 8 squared. I move this square around to assure that all the pieces that I made will fit and will be able to be cut by the laser. Once you're happy with what you created, export it as a PNG and open your laser cutting program. I am using xTool software that pairs perfectly with my F1 Ultra. Click on Import on the left and select your export PNG file. Select Keep Size and adjust the viewing scale of your project and move it off to the side. Keep the image selected and click Trace in the top toolbar. Let the program think and assure that it has traced your entire image and click Save. In the bottom left, click the icon with the 3 stacks of paper to pull up the Layer tab. Select the image in the list and delete it. This will leave us with the traced image as a compound vector. Select the compound vector and click Edit at the top toolbar. We need to remove the outer border to make this work. Click any of the nodes on the outside border and press and hold the Delete key on the keyboard to delete the border. Select Done. Reselect the compound vector and click Release Compound in the top toolbar. This will separate all the pieces into separate vectors. Highlight all the vectors and click on the Applications button on the left toolbar. Find the app called Smart Nesting and click it. The F1 Ultra working area is roughly 8.5 inches squared. I want it to be just under 8 inches, so I will adjust the sheet size to be 200 millimeters wide and 200 millimeters high. I will keep it at a 2 millimeter spacing and make sure to have Treat Content Elements as Whole selected. This will keep my smaller pieces around the eyes and ear together. Click Start Nesting. Unfortunately, it can only do this one sheet at a time. So we need to select the portion of pieces that were nested in the white space and move them off to the side. Using a combination of holding the left mouse button and using the scroller wheel of the mouse, highlight the rest of the pieces and click Start Nesting again. Move the new portion of pieces to the side and continue the process. Depending on the size of your project and the amount of pieces, you may be doing this several times. For me, I had to do it 35 times. But now we're ready to move on and get cutting. First off, adjust the table saw to the size of your nested pieces. Mine is just under 8 inches, so I will be adjusting my fence to 8 inches. This will cut my material down to 8 by 8 squares in the end. I bought a 1/4 inch birch plywood at the box store and will be cutting these down to size. Back at the xTool software, select the material that you are using. Again, I'm using 1/4 inch birch plywood. I find that I usually need to add a pass or two on the pre-selected settings and make sure that you have it set to cut and not score. Select the first nested batch and move it to the white cutting area. Select the rest of the nested batches that aren't being used and delete them. Don't worry, we'll get them back. Click Frame and the laser will frame out the work area. Add the piece of material and line it up with the laser. Click Framing again to turn it off and click Process. The job will be sent to the laser and we're good to cut. The laser will go through and cut each piece out of the material. Always follow the safety rules with your laser. Use protective eyewear and never open the project while it is running. Once it is done, remove the material and click Finish. Press Ctrl Z on the keyboard will undo the delete of the nested batches. Select the one that we just cut and delete that batch. Now select a new batch from the side and move it to the cutting area. Highlight the rest again and delete. Adjust the batch to fit the cutting area if needed, and then continue the process. This is time consuming. For me, it took roughly 7 to 15 minutes per batch, and I had 35 of them. I spent a few hours doing this. Also, because of the nature of the nesting app, the pieces are going to be mixed up. This makes it a giant colorless jigsaw puzzle. I didn't mind this at all, as I enjoy jigsaw puzzles or two, and having a printed out page of your original PNG does help place the pieces to where they need to go. For the background, I painted an OSB board black. This will give the space between the pieces contrast and give all the pieces structure for when I'm ready to glue. Remember to follow your design and leave spacing between pieces for those thicker pen strokes that you've made. If you need to move several pieces around, taping them together like this helps them keep them in the correct spot. At this point, I'm really impressed with what a tiny laser can do. Now, this is all up to you on how you want to finish your project. For me, I'm going to be using some dyes and a little bit of white stain. This powder does a good job and is easy to mix. Make sure to test out your dyes or stains on scrap pieces of the same wood to make sure your colors match. If it's too dark, add water. Too light, add some more powder or coats. If you make a mistake, you can always sand down the pieces or recut them on the laser. I am using white stain to make the color of the wood lighter than its original color. Dyes can be added to the stain as well. Before starting to glue, I go over each piece and make sure that it's in the exact place it was designed to be in. Once the gluing starts, it will be harder to move the pieces to where they need to be. With the birch plywood and OSB, I opt to use indoor wood glue. Depending on the material and the backing used, you might want to opt to use CA glue or crazy glue. I've decided that the natural color of the birch plywood is a close enough tone to the subject's skin color, so I will not be staining or adding dye to the face and neck. I do want to get rid of some of this residue and ash from the laser, so I'm going to be using some rubbing alcohol and a rag to gently clean the surface. After the glue has had time to cure, I can now trim the edges down to the final size. Using the table saw, I take off each side and slowly work the piece through the saw. I add tape to the edges to minimize splitting of the birch plywood as it passes through the saw. And that's pretty much it. Now I did put a trim around the piece, and I put wire on at the back, screwed it into the plywood so that I can have it hanging up in my shop. But that's pretty much all you have to do. I'm pretty impressed with what a small laser can do, and when you put the time and effort into the coloring it and the cleaning it, it comes out pretty nice. But let me tell you a couple cons that I came across while doing this process. So there are some drawbacks of using particularly F1 Ultra or any other lasers that have a fixed laser that angles it. So as it cuts, the laser is at the top is fixed in its center spot. So as it cuts, it's going to angle that laser, and it's going to make your cuts angled. What I mean by that is it's not going to be a straight cut up and down. So the further north or south or east or west of that center laser, it's going to have that angled cut. As it cuts, it's going to be angled as the center of the laser points down and cuts. So the top part is going to be cut perfect to your design, but the bottom of it is going to be wider than what you have made, at least 2 or 3 millimeters on either side. So when you put the piece together, and it needs that spacing, if you want to have a tight butt up against another piece, it might have some issues as the bottom part is wider than the top. So there will be a gap. But how I designed this mosaic type stained glass art is to have that gap between pieces. So I don't need to have the pieces butt up right up against each other. So if you're using an F1 Ultra or another laser that has that fixed laser on the top, just keep in mind that that's going to happen. And the thicker your pieces, the wider that's going to be. This right here is a little more than 1/4 inch. So if you go thinner, that spacing at the bottom is not going to be as noticeable. So just keep in mind when you're working with that. The other drawback is you're only working by a 8.5 by 8.5 space. And if you're not careful, if you don't use the plate that it comes with, the cutting plate, it will cut into the base on the laser. So you want to make sure that your pieces are going to be fitting on this and that it's not going to overlap and cut beyond this. So working with that small of a space, when you're doing a large piece like I did, you're going to have a lot of different cuts. So for my piece, it was 35 pieces that I had to individually cut, which took hours to cut. And with the lasers, you're not supposed to start the job and then walk away. You're supposed to be there just in case if the wood starts to catch fire or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're safe, your product is safe, and you don't damage your laser. These are expensive, so if the wood starts to catch fire, you want to be able to stop it. There are safety mechanisms on the F1 Ultra that stop the process if it does catch fire, but that's not always going to help. You want to be around just in case. So this is a time-consuming process, but it's well worth it. I mean, the footprint of this is a small space on my workbench, so I'm happy with it being able to do small jobs, be able to have a small footprint on my workbench, but be able to do massive pieces of work. So I hope this has inspired you to reach in and stretch yourself and be able to do something different with your laser or with your work. So if you have any comments or if you have any suggestions or if you want to share what you've done with your laser, I'd like to read those. I'd like to see those. So leave a comment. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.